You are now tuned into Reppin Sessions Podcast. Exclusive interviews with White Oak Roughneck legends. Follow on Instagram and Facebook. Reppin the Roughnecks.
Reppin Sessions Podcast. We have a legendary one here. Drove all the way to White Oak from Wills Point for this one. Coach Cotton Miles. Thank you for making the drive, Cotton, and being here for this one. Me and James really appreciate it. Very excited to have you here. I know in the first episode, I'm going to get straight to it, Cotton.
All right.
The first episode we had you on here, I kind of towards the end of it, we were talking, and I asked about, obviously your records in White Oak, and if you ever had a bad season, and if there was ever a chance, or if there was ever a time in town where somebody wanted your job. And you told me you went 5-5 that year, and you had a gentleman knocking door to door, right? Wanting you out of here. You got into the story of the Lake Naverney, how you kind of got on the boat with him, squashed y'all's beef, and he became your biggest fan. You talked about how he was a huge supporter of the Roughnecks. Everybody in town could hear him yell, "Roll, Roughnecks, roll."
That's true.
The first episode I'd ever did, and at the time it was just me. James was the first person to comment on the podcast, and in the comment he said his jaw was dropped because he knew exactly who you were talking about, which was his daddy. So since then, I just want you to know, me and James have become really good friends. We talk every day. He's now the co-host to the podcast with me. And it all started because of your first ever podcast with me and you getting into those stories. So
Stuff I didn't know nothing about. Because all I've ever heard about Cotton Miles was when he wanted me to do something. When Cotton said you ought to do this and you ought to do that when I was growing up. And that's I never heard a bad word about Cotton Miles. But I was in Melissa, Texas, helping keep my grandson. My daughter was out of town, and I was upstairs, and they're upstairs by myself. And then when I started hearing about a hardware store, and no, I didn't have a hardware store, but when I started hearing about moving those refrigerators around, and then the Lake Naverney, I said, oh, hell, he's talking about Daddy done now. And then I thought, Mother never said anything, Daddy never said nothing about it, and it just tickled me. And then it was interesting because I kept hearing Scotty and Cotton say, roar, 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 and they couldn't think of his last name. And then I sent you that message about it, and we went on from there. But yes, Daddy loved Cotton. In fact, 2 years, when he had his first, I think, playoff team, and they were playing at PC Cobb Stadium against Kimball. About that time, we were sitting up there, and I think the first time Woodrow Wilson got the ball, it was, "Come on, Cotton, turn him loose, let him roll." About that time, this man turns and grins and smiles and points, and then he turned back, went to his coaching. But you remember that? Us coming up
sure, I remember it.
Do we want to go on the Red Lowrance, or what do we want to do?
whatever, we'll jump into it. Let's get after it.
Jerry, when he was here, there was an assistant coach that had worked all throughout East Texas. Started coaching in the mid-'60s. He told me that Red Lowrance would, now look at him, he's already grinning and laughing. When the ball game was over, he would try to shake hands with the opposing coach and try to squeeze his hand real good.
Yeah, he tried that.
Right.
Listen, I'm gonna tell you my response to this guy was, I know one coach that son of a bitch didn't send, Cotton Miles. He didn't squeeze your hand, did he, Cotton?
Well, I was sort of forewarned. Well, yeah, that's right. Robert Lowrance is dead and gone now, and I know we're supposed to love our neighbor, But I found it pretty hard to ever find anything about him that I ought to. Heck, because he's dead and gone now. He was a great competitor, I will say
Yeah,
that.
but he had good ball teams.
Yeah, and he would compete. But of course,
What did you do? Did you just maneuver your hand where he couldn't squeeze it?
yeah, more or less.
Bob Perry told Jerry that he had one of the strongest hands that he'd ever,
Oh
ever
yeah,
had.
he could, especially if he had a ring on that hand. he could make it a punishment.
Then Jerry said, and I'm sure you had left and gone to Woodrow, they were playing up at Hawkins in basketball. And I don't know where Mr. Hannicat was. He was probably, might have not come out yet, but Roy and Jerry were out there, and Lowrance came out on the floor, and they headed towards him. They were going to give it to him. You never have heard this?
No.
They were going to give it to him, and Bailey Marshall happened to be standing there, and he went like that, and they backed off.
Yeah, he said him and Roy were.
They were ready to get even
They
with
were
him.
going to go get him. He said they had many talks about going over there and finding where he lived. They were not happy about that.
Well, he was hard to get along with. He thought he was doing all the good for himself and for his team. He thought he would try to win by doing that.
Yeah.
Did he ever beat White Oak in his coaching career?
I don't think so.
Jerry said the next year in '59 that him and Roy came back down here and that they beat White Oak 12-8.
I don't.
He never beat
he
Cotton.
didn't beat this guy. No, he never beat Cotton. And then after that, they were in class, what we call Class B back then. Most of the 1960s, they went up to Class A in '68 and '69.
Yeah.
White Oak, we beat them 52-0 and 42-0. No, but they were a powerhouse in Class B.
Red Lowrance. Well, that's over with.
When we talked to Jerry, and I will replay this for you, I asked him, what it was like playing with you, what it was you being his head coach, and if there's anything you could say to him. And I'll let you listen to it, but he did mention that there wasn't another coach out there he'd rather play for than Coach Cotton Miles.
Jerry Davis. Jerry was an only child, and his daddy would buy a new car every other year. And Jerry, some of the boys would get up here and race. And Jerry won all those years. One year he got a new Ford, and he won the race every week. Until I found out about it, and we discontinued the racing.
Reppin Sessions Podcast, Episode 5, Part 2 with Coach Cotton Miles is brought to you by Castanone Enterprises. Specializing in commercial real estate at first, then shifted over to affordable housing, new construction homes after they saw the need in East Texas, Castanone Enterprises specializes in new home construction and remodels. Castanone Enterprises has been in business for over 30 years, working their way to owner financing properties for buyers who couldn't qualify for lending, to owning multiple multifamily units in the East Texas area. Castanone Enterprises prides themselves in no cookie-cutter homes. Castanone Enterprises proudly supports Reppin Sessions Podcast. Contact them at 903-736-7460 and let them know Reppin sent you.
I don't want it to sound like I'm bragging. It's not. That's not what I'm trying to do here. But last week I had quite a party, and it was mostly my 64 and 65 team from Woodrow Wilson. And that was a great time. Woodrow was the smallest school in Dallas, next to North Dallas. North Dallas is smaller. And we won the city championship there 7 years out of the 10, and made it a good showing in the playoffs. So '65 team in particular had 5 preachers. 5 of them become preachers. They were good kids and good students and good athletes. And we went to the semifinals that year, I think. Wichita Falls beat us right at the end of the game by a little bit. But those kids were they'd already done a lot of things for me. And I had to say it's one of the best years or 2 years I ever had any place. Now, I love White Oak, you understand. But those kids up there really matched them for a couple of years. They dedicated the annual to me. They have named a scholarship in my name. I mean, a huge one, too. It's big enough to help a lot of people. And so they got together just that 2 classes last week, and we had a 79th birthday party. And in that group, several of them have written in my book that they would be in the penitentiary had it not been for high influence athletics. And they remind me so much of the players here. They would have done the same thing.
Well, you were such an influence after you left, because
Yeah.
all of us watched. We were young when you left, and all of us wanted to play for you, and we carried that with us on throughout. You know, when
Well, that's very flattering.
when we were growing up, you know, everybody thought about you and talked about you and about the ones that had played, you know, back in '57 and '58, because we were little then, but you know, I was little, but I remembered when you left. I remembered when the van pulled up. I remember y'all even had a little old white dog too.
Sure did.
James got a memory.
Everybody gets on me about my memory, and you know, I just remember, you know, I remember all the times you came down to Lake Tavernier and fished, and all the times y'all had and everything.
Well, I'd say they were in the middle of the '60s. I had 2 years that would come close.
Yeah.
But when I was here, I was a beginner. I was a young fellow. I was head coach here by the time I was 24 years old. You don't see that anymore.
No.
Didn't see it then.
No.
James has mentioned it a couple of times, and I wanted to ask you, if you would not have been disqualified in '58 and y'all had won a state title, do you think you would have left White Oak?
Well, that's a hard question. That's one of those iffies. And sooner or later I would, because reached the point I wanted to test my ability against the top people in Texas. The only way I could well, in fact, when I talked to Mr. Cobb about our schedule the first year, the athletic director in Dallas pretty much made the schedule for us. But he would ask me, who do you want to play? I said, the best in Texas. I remember very well our conversation. I said, if you're going to be the best, you got to play the best. So give me the best. And then while I was there, I played Longview, Texarkana, Wichita Falls, Odessa Permian, Amarillo,
Tascosa.
Tascosa, I played them. And the one I was been particularly proud of is we played Brownwood. Gordon Wood was coaching there and beat the shit out of them. In Brownwood. Now I'm proud of that.
Well,
So you never scheduled cupcake teams then, huh? Nobody that would work, no competition. But you know, we get a lot of that now. I'll be honest with you. Our schedule, I mean, there's a lot of people look at the first couple of games and think, hey, I mean, those are some cupcake schedules to put a W on the board. So
Yeah. Oh, I threw Garland and Waco in there. We played them both right after that when they won state.
Yeah.
I played the best in Texas.
So you mentioned your 7 out of 10 years you made it to the city championship. Was that what you?
We won it.
So one of the 3 years I heard a quarterback on the team you played was the gentleman in the other room. Is that true as well? That you played your son in the city championship?
Oh,
game?
that's right. Yeah, we
Yeah.
played then.
Jerry mentioned that to us, and I didn't know that. I thought
Yeah.
that was pretty cool.
Y'all didn't y'all play and tie the first time, and then
Yeah,
y'all
we
played
tied
the
the first time.
championship?
We played twice, and we tied the first game. The second game, they won 20-17.
I never will forget. We were laughing down here. Dallas paper comes out. Here's a picture of Miss Miles standing between both of them and everything on the couch, and she's looking at both of them and everything.
Well, we played. She wasn't going to go. She says, "I'm not going to the game to watch it. We're going to play at Cobb Stadium, and it's already a sellout. Over 20,000 people there." And Mr. Bushman was athletic director then. He called her and says, "Miss Miles, we would like for you to be on the television at halftime." This was our game was televised. She said, "Mr. Bushman, I didn't plan to go." He said, "Oh yeah, I'll send a car out there to pick you up." So he sent a cab out there to pick her up, and she went to the game. But I think she stayed under the stands most of the time.
When Scotty got in the playoffs, what did you do? Did you just sit up there in the stands and be a regular
went-
daddy?
I went to the press box and talked to their coaches.
Oh, me.
It was a good ride.
Now, I know this is one question he hasn't asked you. I know you didn't have any trouble with integration, and you know why? Because of the human being you are, and you grew up poor, and most of those kids were poor.
Yeah, the first year we integrated in Dallas, I had a fullback that weighed 215 pounds. A black boy that was a good player. He later he wasn't a very good student, but with their background, it would have been difficult to
Is that the one that
be
went to
good.
TJC, Tyler Junior College?
So he went to Tyler Junior College.
I watched him play. He's a good ball player.
Oh, was he a good ball player? He went on to A&M and played 2 years, and then 8 years he played in the Canadian League. He was drafted by the Chicago Bears, and he gave the ball to John Paul. That was
That's
our
right.
battle cry. John
man.
McCrumbly.
Yeah, he was a big old boy. I'd go watch Kilgore and Tyler play, and he was a big old boy.
Oh yeah, he was a good one. His brother was bigger than he was. His brother weighed about 235.
You had him too, I guess.
I'll tell you a good story about that. I don't know where you want to hear this.
Yeah, we want to hear it. Absolutely.
But when we integrated in Dallas after the first week, somebody came down to the gym one day and told me there's a lady up at the office that wants to talk to you. Damn, who could it be? I said, okay, I'll be right there. So I went up there, and it was Miss Houston. Her name was Houston. She had these two boys, Donald Ray and John Paul. To transfer, they was going to integrate. This is 1967. And I says, yes, ma'am, I'm the football coach, and I'm sure glad to have. I went on it. I'm glad to have them, and we give them every chance to be a player. And me, she says, Miss Miles, says, Coach, I just want to ask one thing. I'm sending my boys up here to get an education, and if they get out of line, you have my permission to tear their ass up. And when they get home, I'm going to tear their ass up. I said, well, Miss Houston, we're going to get along fine. I'll just try to do that. Well, I never had any trouble with those boys.
I bet you did.
Trouble with them. However, the other boy, Donald Ray, went to Tennessee A&I or A&T, whatever they have in Tennessee. But he went up there and was a starter, was a good player for them, and he got killed in a car wreck. But John Paul, after he played that long time in the Canadian League, he come back and went to work for the Dallas Public School. He didn't have a degree and he wasn't a teacher.
Did y'all stay in contact after all those years? And
Oh, I really haven't seen him but one time. I hear from him occasionally. But I won't see him. I saw him up at the Woodrow banquet, and I got to talk with he and the Heisman Trophy winner from Woodrow.
Brown.
Yeah.
wow,
So we had a long conversation, three of us.
that's cool.
Yeah.
So Jerry, I'm gonna go back to Jerry because I thought this story was really funny. What he talked about, we obviously got a lot of Roy Bruce stories out of him because they were close friends growing up.
Oh, yeah.
And I mean, just some really funny stuff he said. And
Talk about when they came by to visit.
yeah, he said
Go
him and Roy had to go to TCU, and you mentioned it. Roy was not a good student. Jerry said he hated school. He was all about having fun. And he said they had to go to TCU to, I think, did Roy have to take a test? Or
Yeah.
he had to take some test because his grades were so bad in high school that in order to get in, he had to take a test or whatever. But they said that they put him on, I guess it was like an academic
Scholastic probation.
Yeah, probation.
Yeah.
And he said Roy was just so confused, had they thought he was getting put in jail because of, probation. And he said they came over to your house afterwards.
Sure did.
And he told you about it. And Jerry said you thought it was funny and just were laughing at Roy about it.
Yeah, we had some funny things. My wife was a favorite of all the players too. I'll tell you another story about her in a minute. But Roy didn't know what that probation was. So he came all the way to my house, drove all the way to say, "What is probation?" He says, "If they're going to put me in jail, I'm not going back." Everybody's on probation, so to speak. If the other starters flunked out of school, they couldn't play.
That's right.
They on probation, they just know that they're going to make it. All they want you to do is pass your work and you get to play. Well, that's all I wanted to know. And he went back and then made it till Christmas and got killed in the car wreck. We had, I tell you what, my wife player so liked her. Miss Lou was Mama Lou. We had at Woodrow, at the end of our workout field was a great big willow tree. And it created a good shade. And this time of the year when we worked out, when we had a break, we went and got under that shade of that willow tree and drank water. And my wife thought, well, they need more than that. One evening we was working out in the middle of workout, and I looked up there and I saw a car sitting in that shade. And I said, "Whoa, that won't do. Hold it just a minute, you boys. I'm going to go move that car." I went up there and my wife, she had 10 gallons of lemonade. So I blew the whistle and let them all come down and get under the shade of that big old tree and drink that lemonade. So they thought she was something special.
Awesome.
Yeah.
The year after we won state, I know he played tough ball teams. He played New London the first game here at White Oak and beat them, I think it was 18-8. And so, New London was always tough. It didn't matter.
London was tough.
They were just a facsimile of White Oak because they were an oil field town and everybody was tough. I mean, it was always it wasn't ever a bad blowout. Nobody beat anybody bad. It was always a tough ball game, and I know, and then when they became West Rush, they were tough for about 10 years, and then the air kind of got let out of the balloon.
Yeah.
That's to say, I know my senior year, we beat them 22-19 down there.
We looked for the last year or two I was here, we started to get our non-conference schedule, and we'd take a map and put it down here and draw a circle 100 miles around it, 100 miles every, and we tried every school in there.
Really?
And they didn't want to play us. Oh, I had a real question about Terrell. Terrell was good then. They won 2 state championships in the 50s. And boy, thank goodness they were 101 miles away. We didn't ever did show.
You wouldn't have played them home and home?
Yeah, I would have played anybody.
I know you would have. Because all you had to do was go up Highway 80.
What caused the biggest stir? Buster Hale was a sports writer in Longview. And he was so for us.
Right.
We got a lot of good publicity. And we wanted to play Longview. And of course they wasn't even listening. They wasn't even about to play us. And they wouldn't play. But they did agree to sketch. We scrimmaged them one day. We went over there and scrimmaged.
What was Longview? What was their
They were
classification?
4A.
Top notch, biggest in Texas.
4A was the biggest at that until they changed it.
But they didn't want to scrimmage us.
Not even a scrimmage?
No, but we did scrimmage, but it didn't last long.
Who were some of your boys that you carried over there with you to scrimmage? Can you remember?
Well, yeah, we scrimmaged. We had Max then,
Oh, okay.
and they couldn't handle Max. But hell, everybody in the United States could handle Max.
That's right.
Max was a favorite of my wife, and he liked her because Max went his last 3 years in high school here. His mother was in TB sanitarium, and the older boys had already, 2 of them had gone to Notre Dame.
Right.
And I don't know, the other one was already coaching down around Austin somewhere. Well, Maxie boy, a lot of afternoon, my wife would just put an extra dip of beans in the pot. And he ate at my table a lot after practice. And he liked those beans.
Mm-hmm.
He liked anything that's cooked, I'm sure.
And then I bet he came by every time Green Bay played in Dallas to see you too.
Oh, he come by. He come back one summer, and he says, "I want to see Miss Miles." Well, our school wasn't quite out. I said, "I'll be out of school this afternoon. In 30 minutes or something." Well, are you going home? I said, "Yeah, we'll go to my house." I was living up on top of the hill then. So Max went with me, and we got up there, and we talked a little bit about Green Bay, just idle talk, and every little bit Max would go through a gyration about like that. And after about the 4th time my wife said, "Max, do you have an ailment?" He said, "Oh no, I'm going up to the draft board and I'm just practicing." But they took him. Yeah, he went in the Air Force.
Yeah.
And he flew with a fighter plane. And he went back to Green Bay.
Before his senior year, did y'all know he was special? I mean, did you everything and more before going into his senior year?
It didn't
Did he
take
have a lot
long
of
to find out.
It didn't take long. So was there a lot of hype with him going into his senior year?
No, he didn't have a lot of publicity. In fact, when Southern Methodist coach come down to see him, he came by the house and said, "Would you go with me to talk to Max?" I said, "Sure, I'll go with you." So we got in his Cadillac, and I was living up on top of the hill then, and we drove. Max was living right up here. Short, this is he and his daddy, and they had a bunch of chinaberry trees there. So I went with Matty Bell, went up to see him. Well, he parked, of course he didn't have air conditioning. And so he parked that Cadillac out front under a chinaberry tree and we opened all 4 doors. And here come Max around the back smoking cigarettes. So we come, Matty sat over there under the driver's wheel, Max sat in the front seat. I got in the back seat so they could talk. And they talked a few minutes, and Max says, "Oh, you're wasting your time. I'm not going to SMU." So, you was carrying this conversation any further. And that was it. He got out of the car and went in the house, did no shirt on. Max was quite a boy. That's my first year as coach, yeah. He looked a lot older than I did. He's shaving every day then. I'd shave once a week. I tell you what we did, it was illegal. And nobody ever knew it. But I was playing semi-pro baseball. So I played in the old East Texas League, minor league baseball the year before. And Gilmer says, "We'll give you $15 a game to play for us, and we'll guarantee you 5 games a week." Hell, that's $75 a week, tax-free money. That's a lot of money. And they would pay us a hat every time you hit a home run. I didn't run, but occasionally I'd hit one. Occasionally, not many, but they'd pay us that hat, just like Sunday morning church. So I was getting along good. And we run out of a third baseman up there at Gilmer. I was playing with Gilmer, and he says, "Do you know of anybody?" I says, "I've got a kid down at school I'll bring up here. He can play third base." So I carried Max, and he played with us for a while.
With you?
Yeah.
And they had no idea he was in high school?
Oh, yeah, they knew.
Speaking of Gilmer, Cotton, tell us about the night the lights went out.
Yeah, that's a good story. I don't know if you've heard.
You hadn't heard that.
I haven't heard that. I would love to hear this one.
All right. We was playing for the district championship. We was right down to the last game of the district championship. We was playing here in White Oak. Well, the game got going, and right at the end, this is for the championship now. Right at the end of the game, we was ahead of them by 20-19. And so they got on a drive right at the end of the game and drove right down to our 1-yard line. And then they were in the last minute of the game. They lined up, a field goal would have won the district championship for them.
Mm-hmm.
So they lined up for that field goal, and just as they snapped the ball, half the lights went out. All the lights went out. The lights went out in the stadium. Well, they wanted to kick it over. They wanted another play. I says, "Hell no, we're not in this kick till you win." He kicked, he missed it, so the game's over. Well, the official signaled that. Boy, I hustled back by the end of the stands and coming back to the dressing room, which was way up on the hill. Boy, this lady hollered up right there. Oh, you could hear her above everybody else. She says, "Cotton Miles, you son of a bitch. If you was my husband, I'd give you poison." I took about 2 steps, and I happened to think about it. I had on a cowboy hat. I tipped my hat inside. I said, "And lady, if I was your husband, I'd take it." And she really got mad.
To preface everything, the stadium was new, right?
Yeah.
This one down here where we play now.
Oh,
It
yeah,
was
that's
just
the
new.
first year we played in.
Yeah. And all the bugs evidently weren't out of it yet. And that happened.
So,
And the first time White Oak and Gilmer played several years ago, they brought that up. One of my cousins got to asking me about that, about what happened the night that the lights went out. And I said, "Well, I wasn't born then. I tried. I wasn't. I wasn't here." But yeah, I've heard that story over and over about.
I know one thing. When I go through Gilmer and Mineola, I roll my windows up.
Oh, mate.
But that's part of White Oak in that time. The only thing they had here was a school and a Baptist church. They'd throw them out once in a while, wouldn't they?
Sure would.
When I came, I went to the superintendent was named Dana Williams. He is the best we ever had. Dana was a good guy. I says, Mr. Williams, my wife and I plan to go to church, but only church I see is this Baptist over here. Is there another one in White Oak anywhere? He says, let me tell you, they stay in uproar over here a lot. They have a hard time agreeing on the same thing. He says, my wife and I are Methodists, so we're going to Glenwood to the Methodist church. I said, you just answered my question. We're going to do the same thing. So we've been now members of the Methodist church for 55 years. That was the only church here, and they were very active. So we went to, well, Pine Tree was a real opponent for us in those days. We played the game over there for one night, and they got to fighting on the sideline, and our players called timeouts to watch the fight. You remember this, don't you?
I was.
It started on the field, the players were fighting, and the fans started fighting. Then they had an old wire fence down both sides, and the crowd, biggest part of them would walk up and down, all the men would walk up and down that fence. Well, we had a guy that carried a chain for us every time we played. He carried a chain. Well, this fight got started on the field, and he was carrying the chain, and he hollered at him. And so one of the players come over and cut him with a knife.
A player?
Oh, this man is carrying a chain.
You talking about Matney?
Huh?
You talking about Matney? Was that who was carrying the chain?
No, it's Mr. Live right up here. Oh, he passed away a long time ago. I'll think of his name, man.
All right.
And one the players that were carrying the chain is run over and they threw this guy over the fence, and as they threw him over the fence, they cut him here, boy, and his whole entrails were showing. And then when they threw him over the fence, he hit right at my feet. And I looked down, there was a man laying there cut wide open with his guts hanging out.
Jeez.
When I was junior college, we played a game up at Sherman. I don't remember the name of that junior college, but there's a guy up there was then weighed about 350. Next time I saw our old Martin boy, we was in I was stationed at Guantanamo, Cuba in the Navy. And a little old ship come in there. I think it was USS Dallas, but I'm not sure about that. Ship came in, and old Chapman was on that ship. But then he weighed over 400 pounds. And he couldn't get up and down the hole into the ship, and they transferred him off. They transferred him off. Next thing I saw him, he was umpired in an old East Texas league, and he weighed 500 pounds.
Oh gosh.
Jeez.
But we used to in that minor league baseball, in order to get a good crowd, everybody come in town would play 2 or 3 games. And if you could have something the first night to make people want to come to the game, that's the way to have a good crowd. Well, Chapman, he'd put that old mask on, it didn't halfway cover his belly. And he'd want somebody run up here and run into me. So I says, I'll just hit him with that man, knock him down, and throw him out of the game. And the next night there'll be the biggest crowd you ever saw here waiting to see what's going to happen. And that was Chapman. Well, it was my time to run into him. We played in Longview. And sure enough, the next night, there was a standing room crowd only to boo that official and so forth.
Well, how many times did you take White Oak to regional in baseball?
Every year.
Every year.
Yeah. Every year we was elders.
And of course, back then, that's as far as they could go, was regional.
The only time we lost was when I played John Tyler in Tyler. But they were, John Tyler, a little bit too much for me. Now when Marvin pitched, they just beat us 4-1. But the next day I run out of pitchers.
You talking about Marvin King?
Yeah, Marvin King.
I heard he was left-handed, wasn't he?
Yeah.
I heard he was a real good pitcher.
Oh, he was a good one. They play anybody. We played Longview too. But John Tyler was the best team in the country then.
I say, there you go. Cotton's playing the best he can find in baseball and the best he can find in football.
I was lucky in some ways. Now, when I was at Stephen F. Austin, I was also on the B team in basketball. They got to play a little. They lettered everybody, so I lettered in basketball. And when track season come around, Mr. Shelton come by one day to a PE class and says, if I could just get 2 more points, we'd win the Lone Star Conference in track. Says, I just need 2 more points. We know what we're going to win. I says, what can I do for you, Mr. Shelton? He said, can you throw the discus? I said, sure. I'll learn tomorrow. And so I went to Houston to this track meet with him and played 6 in the district. Got 2 points. We won the conference, and I lettered in 4 sports.
Golly.
Awesome.
Last one to do that is Stephen F. Austin, I imagine.
Probably. So our next topic, we've talked to Jerry about this. Me and James are pushing this really hard.
Wait a minute. I had one more thing I wanted to tell Cotton about. You was talking about that man, said fire that man.
Yeah.
Okay, well that very same man in 1960, in the winter of 1968, told the head football coach at White Oak at that time, he had probably one of the best groups of boys. Scotty would have been a senior that year.
Oh.
He had one of the best talented teams, just overall talented. The line averaged way over 200 pounds. And he got them all, they all got hurt. 2 or 3 of them had to have knee surgeries. So that man you said that said, fire that son of a bitch, he called this coach and he said, you need to resign. And he says, no, I'm not going to resign. He says, you better resign, because if you don't, they're going to fire you. Guess what happened to him?
Who was that? You remember?
Who was the man that told him that?
Well, who was the coach?
Bobby Williams.
Oh, I didn't know him.
Yeah, you didn't know him. He wasn't here for 2 years.
And he's the one that went 0-10?
No.
Oh.
He went 6-4 and 6-4. But he got fired.
6-4, and they wanted him gone, huh?
Yeah. Daddy told him in January, you're going to get fired. Go on and resign. Save yourself. He wouldn't listen, and they fired him. One man was going to run for the school board to try to get him back on. Anyway, he went over to Wascom for a while. Then he ended up at Wilmer Hutchins. And he did have a winning record there. I think he got beat by Mount Pleasant in the playoffs.
Uh-huh.
And then he went on to be principal or superintendent at Wilmer Hutchins. I can't remember. But he had a lot of trouble a little bit later on. But yeah, Daddy tried to get him to resign.
So 6-4 didn't cut it back then, huh?
Well,
or they didn't like the guy, or what do you think it
there
was?
There were some problems. Let's put it this way: there was some language used more than damn and hell in the dressing room.
Okay.
Now go ahead. I know what you were going to ask, Cotton, but go ahead and ask him.
Okay. So me and James, obviously, we're huge history man. Walking encyclopedia of White Oak. obviously me doing all this, learning the history of White Oak, hearing all the stories of Roy Bruce, still leads White Oak in the all-time rushing record. We have a plan, and we want to get his number retired. 22 has not been retired in White Oak yet.
Oh, really?
Yes, sir. James said after Roy died, nobody wore the number for many years.
Years. 15 or 20 didn't wear it.
In the last probably 10 years, you've seen the number recirculate, and even probably longer than that. You've seen 22. Yeah. And
Freddie Sutton stopped me about 5 or 6 years ago, and he said, "Hey, come here, I want to talk to you." He says, "I thought Roy Bruce's number was retired." I said, "Well, I did too." He said, "Well, look out there. There's a 22." That's before he got sick and died. And I said, "Well, I don't know, Freddie." And evidently it's not.
So our whole thing is we're starting a campaign where we're eventually going to go to people in the district or in the schools that can help us make the decision. But we definitely want to get his number retired.
Oh, I think it ought to be.
And that was the next question I was about to ask. How do you feel about that?
About Roy Bruce?
Mm-hmm. Getting his number retired in White Oak.
I think it'd be very appropriate.
Absolutely. And there we have it. So you heard it from Mr. Cotton Miles.
And we would hopefully, not this year because they've got homecoming and all that, hopefully next year.
We can get that.
Hopefully, we would like for you to be there. If you came 10, 15 minutes and they retired it and then left, if you could, if you're feeling good.
Well, I certainly would be honored.
We're going.
And we talked to Jerry, and he said he wouldn't miss that either. He said he would love to be there as well. So, that was a.
But I don't make plans long range.
Oh, I know that.
It's just something in the future we have, and we wanted your input on it because we thought it was really important to hear what you thought, and that's all we needed to hear.
Very deserving, and it ought to be.
There you have it, Roughnecks, from one of your own. And Cotton says it must be so. That's what my daddy said.
We were playing over at Van. Now that's another one I couldn't handle for some reason. Van used to play good football. They had some good players. Were good college players. We was playing up at Van. That's a year after Roy and his group graduated. We didn't have many good players that next year. And we scheduled Van. We went up there and in the third quarter, we were ahead of them by 1 point. But in the third quarter, we did something and got a penalty. And so that makes it 1st and 25. On the next play, we made another 15-yard penalty. That makes it, what, 1st and 45? Next play,
40.
we got another 15-yard penalty. 3 straight.
1st and 55 then.
Yeah, it made it 1st and 55. And by then, the crowd got real quiet, except Roy.
Except Roy?
You can hear him all over the van. That's all right, Roughnecks. All we need is a little running room.
Well, tell us about the grain door.
About what?
The grain door.
The green door.
Yeah. What was behind the grain door?
Seemed like that's a pepperelli deal.
Yeah, it was.
I don't remember that story.
Because every time you and Lou would come to town, y'all would start talking about the song, The Grain Door.
Yeah.
And I think there's a picture, I think it's in the 56th annual. Daddy was behind the grain door.
Yeah, that's
they
right.
played the song and he came out.
That's part of the pepperelli.
Yeah.
So I guess that was after the boat ride, y'all.
Yeah, that was after the boat ride.
How I never knew about the boat.
I don't know what changed it, but after then, he's the best friend I had in White Oak. And it just happened just like that. There's something happening in that while we sitting in that boat, and I don't know what it was.
When you were the coach at White Oak and at pep rallies, were you pretty involved? Did you get up and talk? Did you?
Every time.
He came back, and I believe it was at the 80, sometime in the mid-80s. I think he had been retired a year or so, and he got up and gave a real good talk at the pep rally. I remember that.
I wish that was on video somewhere, huh?
Well, I did.
Well, I made it a point that everywhere I coached, that during the week there's 2 or 3 people I'm going to meet with, and they seem to appreciate each day. The pep squad, the band, the drill team. After I got to Dallas, I had a drill team, and I met with them every week and told them what a good bunch they were, and that we were playing for them, and how much better we could play it. They appreciate it.
You know he's a great fisherman. Oh yeah. Fish every lake in East Texas, and I don't know where else.
Yeah, I fished a lot.
Him and Bob Perry and Emil Hannicat were probably the 3 best bass fishermen I've ever heard of. Been around.
Yeah, we caught many of them. Of course, I always have a tender place in my heart for White Oak. I got my start here. My wife and I loved living in White Oak. Of course, we loved living in Woodrow Wilson. The Skyline we had. I went to Skyline, and at that time it was one of the 2 or 3 biggest schools in the state of Texas. And I'll always wonder how it had turned out if it hadn't been for integration.
So do you think without the disqualifications you would hold more state titles at White Oak as well? I know James has mentioned it as well. He said if you were never left or those disqualifications would never happen, he said you would have many state titles for White Oak.
Oh, I don't know about that.
I do.
He said he
I
did.
could name 6 or possibly 7 years that you would have had real good shots.
I had one big advantage. A lot of high school getting hatched. I worked for the Cowboys 34
Yeah,
years.
he did.
And in associating with, not Tom Landry so much, we didn't sit around and bull with him much, but with all the assistant coaches, we were able to stay up with the latest changes, and the game certainly has changed. It's not the same game now it was 60 years ago.
Yeah. A lot's changed.
Couldn't you just see Jerry Davis back there taking the snap and Roy Bruce being your only running back, and then having Jimmy Cox and David Alexander and Freddie Sutton and some of them running out?
And that's what I'd be doing if I was still coaching, because that's the trend. That's what the rest of them do.
Did you ever run the wishbone?
Oh, I've run it a little bit.
James, any last words?
I'm glad that I've got to spend this afternoon that we've got to, because I've always loved Cotton. I've always been impressed by him. I always followed his time here and when he left, and I think I told I was across the street when they were loading up to leave over my granddaddy's, and and just how much my daddy loved him and how much my family loved him and still do, and how how much we look up to him for the things he stands for.
Well, I appreciate all that.
And it's been an honor learning White Oak history in the short 6 years I've been here, and learning a lot I didn't know about. And having you on as that episode 1, James said it was just couldn't have picked a better person. So
Right.
we were just
Good man.
honored to have you, and I love being able to sit here and talk with you. And your episode 1 is still the most viewed podcast I've had out of the 4. So that tells you something. A lot of people liked hearing you talk, and but yeah, it's been a really awesome experience. Getting to sit with you and talk with you and learning the White Oak history that a lot of people may have not have heard or know about. So it's always great to hear the history.
I'd like to talk about White Oak. It was our starting place.
And very honored to talk with you, and I do appreciate it. And I hope everyone out there gets to know a little bit about the history, some of these people that maybe not have been in the community as long, or younger people that don't know, because like I said, it's first couple of years here I was learning a lot and I didn't know a lot. And but yeah, I definitely love hearing the history. And this man right here, boy, if I ever need anything, he knows the answer. So, and he raves about you. He wasn't lying when he says he loves you, and so it's always great to hear this side and get to see that smile on his face.
Only time I get aggravated at him is when he tells somebody to come see me about trophies.
About what?
Trophies. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm talking about. That man that came by y'all's house that time. Y'all wasn't wanting to mess with him. He said somebody was going to see me. He said, yeah, go on down there and see. He knows all about that. And that very day I ran into it when I got back.
Reppin.
Well, that's funny. That's a good story. How I happened to come here. I didn't know. Well, somebody told me you go to White Oak. I wouldn't know where to go. I was playing baseball in the old East Texas League. See, right after the war, everybody had a team. Gladewater, Kilgore, Longview, Henderson, Lufkin, all had teams in that league that year. It's Class B league. And I'd signed with them, got out. Our last game at Stephen F. Austin, we played Lufkin. Out of the old East Texas League hadn't started in the spring. It was still in the spring. Then I hit a home run in that game. And the next day I signed was Lufkin. And so we played around over East Texas. And we were playing in Kilgore one night. And we played. When the game was over, this well-dressed guys and well, the others, there was two of the short guys with him. And that was Dana Williams, who was superintendent at White Oak. And they said, we'd like to talk to you about a coaching job. At that time, I had already signed a coach down at a team right on the coast for $2,600 a year.
So you were playing baseball. You were offered a head coaching football job at another high school before White Oak?
I was just going to be assistant.
Assistant, okay.
In football, basketball, and head baseball coach. That's what they offered me that night. And I said, well, I need to talk to my wife about it. I think she'll want to do what I want to do, but I'm not going to tell you. They says, well, can you bring her up in the morning? I said, we'll be there. That was on Saturday night we was playing. Well, I went back to Lufkin, got my wife, and we went to White Oak the next morning and met Dana Williams. When we left, I'd signed the contract. He says, I can get you out of that contract.
They pay it off, or how do you think they did that?
Oh, I think the superintendents were just friends, and they released me down. And besides, I got $3,100 up here. That's $500 more.
Did you ever think when you signed that looking back, that you would have had the career you had, and are you glad you picked White Oak and didn't go there?
No, but it's been a good. Well, I was going Brazosport. That's where I had already signed.
Oh.
And I was going to be a junior high coach and make $2,600 a year and drive a bus. And when they offered me $3,100 up here, whew, I got a big raise in a hurry.
Now tell us what happened. How did you become head coach? Who left and everything?
Oh, well, Lee Mitchell.
Lee Mitchell left.
Lee Mitchell was at White Oak as head coach. I was assistant basketball and head baseball coach. But when he left to go to Gladewater, it was my second year, I got to be the head coach.
Pretty exciting.
Sure. 24 years old, head coach.
And then you hired Moon Mullins, right?
I hired Moon Mullins, who I'd been in the Navy with.
Didn't he go into insurance, Cotton?
He went into first of all selling sporting goods equipment
Okay.
out of CNS and Fort Worth together for 3.
And he
So I hired
stayed.
him as my line coach.
He
Was that his
stayed.
first year coaching, or?
No, he was going. He had finished a year behind me, and he had coached 1 year down South Texas somewhere.
And he stayed till what, 56?
Yeah, he stayed with me 7 years.
And then you hired Bailey Marshall.
Yeah.
Where did you find Bailey Marshall at?
Gladewater.
Gladewater?
Well, Bailey, he had played at Stephen F. Austin, and I'd recommended him at Gladewater.
And then Bailey took his place and was here 5 or 6 years, and he was principal for I want to say 2 years, and then he left and went down to.
Is
Lockhart.
Gilbert still a superintendent here?
No, Sir Gilbert retired.
He did.
Yeah, but I see him all the time. I see him walking, and I speak to him and talk to
Well, I'd
him.
be darned.
They named the science building after
Science
him.
building up here,
Gilbert, he coached it. He was a coach at
Will Point.
Wills Point.
Yeah, James told me that you hired him there, and then he ended up coming to White Oak,
Yeah.
which was a
No,
pretty
he
cool.
went to Spring Hill.
Uh-huh.
Gene King hired him at Spring Hill.
Oh.
And then he came here. Then he went back to Spring Hill. Then he came here as superintendent.
But started with coaching Wills Point. That's pretty cool.
He's got a picture. He had a picture in his office taken of him and Gene King and Cotton together when they celebrated their 50th reunion of winning the state championship up here one night.
Any last words, Coach? Any last words, James?
Yeah.
I know Scotty's over there probably,
Scotty may be ready.
but we do appreciate
We
it, Coach.
sure do.
It's been real fun. Me and James were really looking forward to it.
Yeah.
And part 2 with Coach, and Coach, thank you so much for coming down and making the trip to White Oak. Coach did come to White Oak, so that was an honor to have you back here, and hope you enjoyed it. And part 2 is in the wraps.
Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Roll, Roughnecks, roll.